Hi everybody, this is Robert. So we're going to get started now. I am a rope tech with Over the Edge. It's my third season working with the company. I work full-time for them. Like I said a little bit before, we are going to go through this quick PowerPoint presentation. It should take us about 40 minutes. It's in 3 sections. There will be time for questions between each section. And just to keep the background noise down, it works best if everybody can mute themselves either with your phone or the microphone on your computer using the GoToMeeting software control panel thing. So the first section that we're going to go through is who Over the Edge is and what we try and do. The second section is about what goes on at the event, both from the participants' perspective and from our perspective. And then the last section is what Over the Edge brings to each event and what we look to you guys to bring to each event. If you have any questions, you can also type them into the chat window, and I can see those at any time and hopefully address them. Yeah, so first of all, thank you guys for committing the time to come out and do this. We do events all across the country for local charities, and you guys are going to come out and support your local cause in your city, and you're going to meet a lot of other people from your area, both as participants and ropes volunteers, and everybody's going to have their own reason for being there and doing the event. So you're going to meet a lot of other really nice, fun people, I'm sure, and hear a lot of really cool stories. So we want to thank you guys for coming out and spending the time to do that. We, Over the Edge, are a private company, and we work all across the country helping nonprofits raise money by doing this particular type of fundraiser. Our mission as a company is to help nonprofits raise $50 million over 10 years, and as of last year, we are about halfway there. So we're doing a good job in that regard. This event that we do, the Urban Rappelling Adventure, is what we do because it's just more media grabbing, a lot more spectacular. You get a lot more attention than if you're just doing another golf tournament or banquet dinner or other type of fundraiser like that. We do a lot of work with the nonprofit to partner with them and having them run everything they can locally, the marketing for it, the logistics for it, and then we fly in a couple of rope techs just to do the more technical aspects of it. And we do that by running the event actually as an industrial work site. So we have our own best practices using industry standards for that, and we do a lot of technical and logistical things to abide by those standards. One of those standards is that all of our staff are certified as ropes access technicians, either through SPRAT or IRATA, SPRAT being the Society of Professional Ropes Access Technicians, and IRATA being the International Ropes Access Trade Association. SPRAT is more centered in the U.S. and recognized in North America, where IRATA is centered in Europe and more recognized worldwide. However, when it comes to the nuts and bolts of how we do things on rope, they are almost identical. We want to make sure that one of our certified technicians double checks every participant before they're allowed to rappel. So you'll notice when we're talking about how the event flows this evening, that there are built-in checks to our process to make sure that one of our guys has looked over everything before a person leaves that roof. As I said, we work as an industrial work site, so we obviously look to OSHA for a lot of our standards for working at height. They reference a lot of other standards by other bodies like ANSI, ANSI, And sometimes we'll even look to things like the NFPA, which is a Fire Protection Act for like technical rescue workers. So we have a broad range of different areas to pull from in what we do. And we're trying to use the best solutions for our particular environment. There's a lot of paperwork, of course, as well. And we put together what we call the Site Inspection Safety Plan. This is a 20 to 30 page document that has all the nuts and bolts on the site, from the building height to a proposed rigging plan. We try and include where fire extinguishers are, things like that, a muster area in case of emergency. And one of the more important things we put in there as well is what we call the job hazard analysis, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end. And that's kind of a daily safety meeting where we make sure everybody has the same information when it comes to any hazards that are on the work site. And one of the most important logistical things that we do is what we have, you guys as ropes volunteers come out who have some sort of experience working with rope. We really want to rely on that in your experience. So if you see anything that you think is unsafe, we want you guys to be able to stop the event until we resolve that. It may be something that you're not familiar with and is actually okay. In this case, we'll just keep rolling. It might be something small that we can take care of locally, or it might be something big, like if you saw a lightning strike, for instance. We would want you to let us know, and we're going to shut down the whole event. If we do shut down the whole event, the only person who is allowed to restart the event is our site safety supervisor, and that's going to be a level 3 certified technician that we have on site to head up the entire event. A little bit about the technical side of what we do for this event is we're going to set up every rappel station as a 2-rope rappel. Each rope has its own independent anchor systems. The anchors are going to be on the building, either structural anchors or engineered anchors that we have certification paperwork for. We're going to rig all of our lines to release. So we have twice as much rope as any building we work on is tall, and we rig through a friction device so that if anything were to happen, we can lower people to the ground quickly and safely. We're going to have everybody in full body harnesses, and each rope that they have is going to get its own device, and each device attaches to the harness in a different area. So really 2 fully independent systems are what we're going to be rappelling on. And then we also bring with us artificial high points. So you can see behind in this picture here these tripods. And we do that because a lot of our participants have never rappelled before. So if you guys have ever done any rappelling, which I assume you have, you know it can be difficult to manage that rope if it's going over the edge down by your feet and you're trying to pick it up and deal with the rope weight with your hands and maneuvering and all that stuff. Whereas if the ropes are hanging above you and you're getting onto the ropes, it tends to be much easier. You just have to worry about your body placement more. So even if the building has built-in high redirects we can use, we'll do that. And if not, we'll bring out our own tripods. And we also have checklists posted at every stage of the event to make sure that we can monitor progress that way. And you're going to notice that we have a rescue plan posted at each of the rappel stations as well. Here's a couple more photos of some of our rigging. Very prominently, you can see the orange and gray tripods that we use. These are Pterodapter tripods. They're sold jointly by PMI and SMC. We really like them because they provide a variety of different setup and rigging options. And because every roof that we've ever worked on has been different than every other roof we've ever worked on, we really need that kind of versatility. You'll also see the 2 ropes passing through the head of the tripod in these photos. There's going to be 2 different colors for each station, but the backup line is always going to be orange. But you can also see how the tripod itself is not the anchor. The building is where the anchors are, and the tripod is just that high redirect, as I said. Also, a couple smaller things. You can see perhaps a step ladder to help people up over that parapet, some sort of protection on the parapet, so places that don't normally have footprints continue not to have footprints. We really want these buildings to invite us back year after year. And also life safety lines, for instance. If the wall for the parapet is less than the OSHA approved height, we need some sort of secondary protection there for anybody working near the edge. So the other very important part of our company is you guys, not just the professional rope techs that we have, but you as volunteer rope staff. As I said, we really rely on you and your knowledge from using ropes in other areas, be that rock climbing or technical rescue or in some other area. And we're going to use that knowledge so that you guys can work at each technical part of the event. We're going to have you helping people get into the harnesses correctly, help training them on how the gear works, getting them attached to the ropes correctly and quickly, getting them to the ground safely with effective belaying, and getting them off the ropes at the end as well. And one of the biggest things we do is having you guys coach them through that transition from standing vertically on the building to standing horizontally on the wall. It's really the most difficult part of the event is getting people to make that transition, so it takes a lot of time and effort on our part. We really appreciate having you guys there to make that happen. So that was the first section of our presentation tonight, all about who Over the Edge is and who works for us. We're going to stop here for some questions briefly. I'll unmute everybody on my end.
Mine is the iPhone.
I'm good.
Right on top. Yeah.
Okay, well, it seems like everybody is pretty clear on who Over the Edge is, which is great. We'll move on here. The second section is definitely the longest and the most involved, so bear with me. And again, you can type into that chat window if you have any questions, or wait until the end of this section. A quick overview of the event from how a participant sees it. They have a set rappel time, we'll say 9 a.m. They're going to show up an hour before that, so 8 a.m., where they're going to go to registration and check in with the nonprofit who confirms their identity, has them fill out some paperwork, and empty their pockets. From there, they're going to go to staging, which is the first area we work. They're going to turn in their paperwork. We're going to double check that their paperwork has been filled correctly, and then we are going to get them into the appropriate harnesses. Once they're in the harness, we're going to get all the other equipment on them, and then have them escorted up to training. At training, they're going to get some quick explanations on how each of the devices work, and then it'll be their turn to do the training rappel. That may be a full one-story rappel, or it might be what we call a ground school, using just a tripod where they can rappel, 2 feet or 3 feet underneath the tripod to get used to hanging in the harness and how the devices work. Once they finish training successfully, they get to be escorted up to the main rappel. When they're there, they're going to get loaded onto rope by one of you guys, double checked by one of our rope techs, and then it's going to be their turn to do the full rappel. They are scheduled between 10 and 15 minutes on rope. When they have successfully completed the rappel, then they're going to go back to staging, return all of our gear, and they're off for the day. And that typically does take a person about an hour to complete that whole process. So the first place we're going to work in that process, as I said, is staging, and registration is going to be run by the nonprofit with non-technical volunteers. First thing we want to do at staging is double check that waiver, make sure it's been filled out completely and correctly, and then we're going to write the time down on our copy of the schedule so we know where we are during the day and if we're ahead or behind on things. Once we do that, we're going to confirm they don't have any droppable objects. We have a strict no dropped objects policy, so they can't have anything at all in their pockets. We're going to make sure that their hair is tied back, that they don't have any dangly jewelry on, that if they have prescription glasses, we're going to put a keeper strap on there. Once all that's been confirmed, we're going to get them suited up into one of the harnesses. We're using Petzl Navajo BOD harnesses, which you may or may not be familiar with. There are full body Class C harnesses. We're going to talk a little bit about how they fit on site when we do our on-site training. But once we have them into those correctly, then we're going to attach the two devices that they'll have, their backup device and their main device, an extra carabiner on their right-hand side, helmet, gloves, and a radio. And then we're going to go through the checklist, which is the most important part of staging. This is what it looks like. All those things I just talked about, make sure that hair is tied back, that their pockets are empty. The participants really end up hating that question by the end of the day. Make sure they don't have any loose clothing. I always get worried if I see shoes that don't have laces because I'm afraid of them slipping off. Make sure the harness is laid correctly and snug in all the areas by checking where all the harnesses are, all the buckles are. Make sure that the backup device is attached appropriately to their sternum ring, that their main device is attached appropriately to their center ring, that friction carabiner is on their right-hand side D-ring, that all the carabiners are locked. We use auto-locking tri-action carabiners everywhere a participant could get their hands. So if there's a carabiner that's not locking, that means it's not working, and we need to retire it. Make sure they have gloves and a helmet. They have a radio that's going to remain off until they get to the main rappel. Answer any questions they may have and get them out of there. We do have that really tight schedule that we're keeping. Everybody is scheduled for 10 to 12, 15 minutes on rope, which means that we've got between 4 and 6 people scheduled every hour on each rope. And it really takes a lot of effort to keep things moving and to stay on schedule or a little ahead of schedule during the day. That's one of the other reasons we have those escorts provided by the nonprofit, to make sure that nobody gets lost or dilly-dallies between sections. Up at training now, we're going to finally talk about all the gear we hung on all the people. So we're going to talk about the backup device first, which is going to be the Petzl ASAP for our events this year, and the main device, which is going to be the Petzl ID for all of our events this year. And we're going to demonstrate how they work and how to operate them. We're also going to show how each device locks and unlocks. Once everybody has seen the speech, we're going to have them try one by one on the training rappel themselves, where they'll have the opportunity to hang in their harness and practice locking and unlocking both of those devices as they complete the rappel. Before they go anywhere, though, we're going to make sure we go through another checklist with them. At the end of the checklist, it says double check with an over-the-edge staff member. So it's going to be somebody in an orange shirt. Since that's been done, that's when they actually get to do the rappel and practice that stopping and starting. A little bit about the devices. If you haven't seen the Petzl ASAP before, it's this mobile fall arrestor. The rope passes through the body of the device and is captured there by the carabiner. And as it progresses down the rope, the wheel on the center of the device spins. It does have teeth and a centrifugal cam. So when that wheel spins too fast, the cam locks it and the whole device stops. Because the wheel is toothed, the device also comes with a shock absorbing lanyard. We obviously don't want to shock load a rope with a toothed device. And we want to make sure that the ASAP and its lanyard are always together throughout the day. We never want those things to be separated because they really work as a system. That's how they're sold and that's how it works. Because of that centrifugal cam, however, the ASAP effectively adds a speed limit to our rappel. So if you guys are really comfortable on rope and love zipping down them, you'll have to back off a little bit, or that device will put you in your place. And it also discourages bounding, and it doesn't like those sudden changes in speed. It is a great device. It is kind of one of the industry standards. It's a little bulky, a little heavy for maybe recreational use, but it's practically foolproof once you get it onto the rope correctly, and it really works well in our use case. If you have any other questions, Petzl always has great information on their website. You can look it up, and I've also included the URL here. Our main device for the rappel, so that everybody's going to be in their own control of their own descent during the event, is the Petzl ID. This is a variable friction, single rope descender. So once the rope is loaded in there correctly, it passes through, however fast you want it, depending on how much you engage the device. However, it is a hands-free fail-safe device, so if you're not touching it, you don't tend to go anywhere. One of the nice parts about it is its anti-panic feature. With a lot of devices where you squeeze them to let rope go through, if you are over-anxious and really clamp down in your anxiousness, you can inadvertently let more rope through. The idea, the way it works, is you pull on that handle, and if you yank on it too hard, it actually has its own internal locking mechanism, which is great. I really like it because once the device is hanging on the participant, it can be loaded and unloaded without detaching it from the participant, so it never becomes a drop hazard. And you'll also notice that it's our device of choice. It's always going to be on the belt of the rope techs that you see, and we also use it for rigging and in rescue scenarios. It is rated for a 2-person load in rescue scenarios, which is a really nice feature of it as well. And again, if you have any more questions, you can look it up on the Petzl website. It is a spectacular device. Again, in the industrial world, it's a little heavy, a little bulky, a little complex, but we get to move things around with a pallet jack. We don't have to hike it in a few miles to where we're going to be working. It's a really great device if you haven't seen one before. It may remind you of a gree-gree, the way the action on it is, but it is a significantly more complex device. Okay, the logistical part of our rappelling is this next checklist here. It may remind you of the one from staging, but it's slightly different. Again, we're going to triple check now about any loose clothing or drop hazards. Make sure that that harness is still fitted in them correctly. They haven't messed with it at all. They have the gloves and their helmet on, that the ASAP is attached both to the person and to the rope correctly, that the ID is both attached to the person and the rope correctly, that the tail of the rope going through the ID is also going through that friction carabiner on their right-hand side, that all the carabiners are locked. Give them any last-minute advice, like not to over-grip things. Let them know that the ID might be hot at the bottom. It is a friction device. Answer any questions they may have. Go over the rescue signal, which we'll talk about in just a second, that the belayer is ready and waiting, that their radio works, and then let them go through the rappel. A note about the rescue signal, we use both arms out to the side as a sign for I need assistance. We do that for 2 reasons. One is that there's a lot of spectators at our events, and so people are waving a lot of the time to their family and friends. We don't want to be confused if they're waving at people or if they need help. So not too many people wave with both arms at the same time. It makes our rescue signal a lot less ambiguous. The other reason is the ID, as I mentioned, is a hands-free fail-safe device. We know if they're not touching it, they're not going to be rappelling. The rescue procedure most of the time is that they've locked up their ASAP, and we need to transfer their weight off of their ASAP back onto the main line. We do that by letting some rope out at the top of the ASAP line, and this loosens that line, transferring their weight back to the ID. This only works if they're not trying to rappel at the same time. We know that they cannot be rappelling, however, if they have their arms out to the side. So the rescue signal also lets us know they're not engaging any of their devices and that we can transfer their weight from one device to the other effectively. If that's a little bit complex or confusing, I apologize, but I can promise that when you're on rope and trying to unlock that ASAP yourself, it will make perfect sense. Okay, training's a little bit too much. The main rappel is significantly easier. Everybody's already been trained. Once they get up to the main rappel area and it's their turn to go, we're probably going to attach them to some sort of fall restraint line, especially if the parapet is like the one in this photo, where it's clearly not going to be an OSHA-approved fall protection wall. We're going to load up their backup device first, then their main device. We're going to go through that same pre-rappel checklist with them, make sure the belayers are ready, have them double-checked by one of the orange shirts, and then it's going to be up to you guys to coach them through that transition. Once they have made that transition, we're going to monitor them for the first 10 or 20 feet, make sure they get off okay, maybe have them stop and look at a camera. And then we're going to periodically check on them through the rappel and keep a close ear to the radio in case the belayers notice anything that we need to resolve from the top. Makes the main rappel sound so easy to work, doesn't it? Okay, the belayers, you guys have probably the toughest job of the day, right? There's a lot of communication involved. We try and keep an extra person down there just to work the radio, so that if you're working the radio, you don't have to worry about the ropes and vice versa. You guys are going to watch their speed and their condition as they rappel. Like I said, a lot of these people have never rappelled before, so they may get tired halfway through the rappel and need some assistance just because of fatigue. If we do notice anything where we need to help them to the ground safely, you're going to have to communicate with the roof about that. The other thing is you might have to help control their speed as they come in. Sometimes we get, speed demons out there, or just people who aren't aware that as they go down the rappel, they're going to go faster because they have less rope weight. And so we need to help control that speed near the end to prevent lockups. And we're going to do that by just doing a simple fireman's belay on their main line. We're also going to have to help guide them around any obstacles near the bottom of the rappel. Sometimes there's lights or landscaping or underhangs or something that we're trying to guide these guys around, and we want to communicate with them while we do that, of course. One of the most wonderful parts of this job is that you guys are going to be the front line for our high fives and hugs when people get onto the ground. So make sure you put on your deodorant that morning and have a big smile so that you can help people off in their moment of glory. And you'll probably be in a lot of photos as well. Once they are on the ground safely, we're going to get the gear off of the ropes and communicate with the top that the rope is clear so they can start loading the next person. Again, we have that really tight schedule to work with through the day, and we want to make sure those ropes are full as much as possible. One other job that may come down for the belayers is that on some events, logistically, it makes more sense to use what we call gear runners. So instead of having the participant keep all their gear on and go to staging to be deharnessed, we might take some of the gear off of them that we have less of, like radios, and pass that back directly to the roof. It makes a shorter loop for those pieces of gear to go through, and sometimes it just makes the event flow better. That is a case-by-case basis, however, and we'll let you know on site if it's going to be like that on your event. As I said, the second section is definitely the longest and most involved, so we'll pause here again for any questions you may have about how we do things at each section.
2 years ago, and the counters are brand new. I can tell. Any children? No. I don't really want kids.
You got my number?
No, not everyone has to have children. You should talk to my husband.
Sure.
All right, well, I didn't hear any questions there, just a bit of background noise. So I'll move on. Again, if you have anything, you can type it into that chat window or ask it at the end. The last section here is pretty quick. It's just about what Over the Edge is going to bring to the event and what we look to you guys to bring. So the day before the event is going to be your on-site training. This is 3 hours, either from 1 to 4 p.m. or from 4 to 7 p.m. the day before the event. When you guys show up, we're going to do a bit of paperwork and introductions, of course, and then we'll get right into it, talking about the gear and how it all fits and works, so you guys can see those harnesses, perhaps, if you're not familiar with them. We're going to go over the participant flow of the event so that you guys all understand where each part of the event takes place and how to get there and back, because we're going to use a lot of service elevators and service corridors, places the public doesn't normally see, and so they can be a little bit confusing because of that. We're going to talk about any on-site safety considerations and position-specific stuff as well. So, if it's Arizona in June, we're going to talk about the heat. Or if the belay area is next to an active roadway, we're going to talk about the traffic. Or if there's tripping hazards on the roof or anything like that we need to talk about. All that stuff kind of wraps together in what we call the job hazard analysis, where we get everybody's information and everybody says, yes, I was at the safety meeting and I was given all of the same information about being safe in my workplace. We'll talk a little bit about our rescue procedure, which 99% of the time is going to be to lower the participant to the ground and let qualified medical personnel take over. And then we're going to have you guys run through the whole event, from staging through training and mains and belay, while taking extra time to explain each step and how we should be working and acting at each area. So for training day, we're going to make sure we have water available, obviously, for you guys. Whereas on event day, we're also going to make sure that there's other snacks, other drinks, and lunch will be provided. We bring with us all of the technical gear that's needed. So all the ropes, harnesses, helmets, gloves, everything that needs to be there for this event to happen, we're going to bring with us. And we're also going to have available for you guys volunteer staff shirts that are blue. They say over the edge staff on them. And that way, when we give those to you on training day, you can wear them the next day at event day. So we're all in the same shirt, and everybody can see that you guys are part of the team and have all the answers that they may be looking for. What we look to you guys to bring is your ropes working mindset. It's not just about being safety conscious, it's also about being detail oriented and having that situational awareness about what's going on around you, and really being more vigilant throughout the day about those safety things. We're going to need all of your energy and enthusiasm throughout the day. On a typical event, we're going to have 76 people on the schedule, and we want every one of them, from the first one to the last one, to have a great experience. They're all going to be nervous and excited and anxious, and that last person over the edge, even if you're tired and have been doing this all day, needs to feel special and that they are going to be in good, safe hands while they're doing our event. So we're going to take everything you've got and put it out there to make this event amazing for every participant. We're also going to have you guys wearing appropriate shoes, which seems like a small detail compared to the last one, but of course, we want you guys to be comfortable and safe, so definitely no closed-toed shoes, nothing that's going to scuff up the building on the way down. Again, we want them to invite us back next year, that sort of thing. I have had to duct tape shoes onto people's feet before, and it makes for a good story, but it's really a pretty terrible reality. I want you to dress for the weather. I always suggest people wear long sleeves and long pants just so it's less area you have to put sunscreen on, but you also won't have to worry about the stray friction device bumping into your skin or anything like that. Of course, we also give you short sleeve t-shirts, so use your best judgment there. And sunglasses or a hat with a brim are always a good idea. Even on an overcast day, belaying can be really hard on your eyes. So thank you guys for coming out tonight. It's pretty much the end of the presentation. We finished just about on time, so that's great. And I just want to really point out that this kind of thing couldn't happen without you guys coming out to do it. We could not, as a company, afford to send a dozen people to every event to work or more. It would just be too much of an investment on our end and for the nonprofit. So it really comes down to you guys coming out and supporting your local cause and your local nonprofit, which makes this possible. So thank you guys very much. I'm sure you've got your own stories about working on rope, and we can't wait to meet you and hear those stories and share with you our passion for working on rope. And if that doesn't sell it for you, hey, there's always that free rappel that you get to do in your own city. So thanks again for coming out tonight, guys. I'm going to be here for probably the next 15 minutes or so to answer questions, anything you may have. Oh, that's an excellent question about the rain. Our weather policy is that everything works in the rain, including volunteers. However, like swimming, if there's any lightning or thunder, we are going to put the event on a weather hold until that passes. So that may be just a quick half hour. It may be an hour or two. The other weather issue that comes up is high wind. So those are the things that we're really concerned about, but we tend to just push through the rain because the participants themselves are only going to be out there for a few minutes of it. I also want to say that I put the presentation back to the beginning here, so you guys can see my email address, which is rpitkin, P-I-T-K-I-N, at overtheedgeusa.com. In case there's any questions that come up later on, you can always email me. I'll be happy to get back to you. Or if you have somebody who couldn't make it here tonight for the presentation but still wants to see it, I can email you a PDF copy of it as well. Does anybody have any other questions about the event? Perhaps about cameras or anything like that? That is a great question, Barbara. Yes, you guys can store your own belongings down in staging. There will be somebody in the staging area at all times during the event. Depending on the building and the space that we're allotted, we may even have our own secure area off to the side to put our stuff. Will somebody be recording the event? That is different at every event. Our camera policy is that you're allowed to have any kind of hands-free helmet-mounted camera with you. So generally that's a GoPro or a similar camera. Sometimes the participants bring them on their own. Sometimes the nonprofit provides them. But many times there's media that comes to the event, either print media or TV stations or websites or something like that. So a lot of the time there's cameras around, and almost every single time I've seen, the nonprofit has a photographer on the roof taking photos of each person as they make that transition over the edge. But yeah, every event is different. I'm sorry, John, I don't know how much recording will be going on at your event. That's a great question, Barbara, about cameras. It's typically the same thing for you guys as the participants when it comes to the camera policy. However, we do trust you, and we are relying on you guys to be safe workers. So if you have another camera with you, we'll probably be able to get it up to the roof for you and take a couple photos. We just can't let it go within 6 feet of the edge if it's not secured, of course. And again, it's per event on what time to show up on the event day. Sometimes the event starts earlier or later, depending on how it works for the nonprofit. Typically, we rappel starting at 9 a.m., which means the first participant would show up at 8 a.m., and we would schedule our safety meeting at 7:30. However, typical events seem to be fewer and fewer these days, and everything's a little bit tweaked. So if you guys have signed up on our website with your email address, I can assure you that we will get to you guys the most up-to-date information within 7 days of the event. We generally have a 7-day cutoff for any changes to the event, and that's when we would send out all the information to you guys. These are excellent questions, guys. Please keep them coming. I'm going to stop the recording now, however.